What's going on, everybody? Yes, anytime you see this, I'm driving, so bear with me. I wanted to just talk to you guys about something real quick. I be saying real quick, and sometimes it's real quick, and sometimes it's not. It's whatever. I wanted to just pose a question and then kind of just talk about it and maybe do some encouraging. But I want to ask you, how do you manage and handle, and how do you respond when there's a crisis, when you have a trigger, or when you have a thought that may have came up in your present that may have happened in the past? And here's why I'm asking that, because the devil's so tricky. And we don't know when our mind and our emotions is going to prompt a memory to come up, if you will, right? Unless we're deliberately trying to think about something. Here's why I said that. And I'm not going to give the overall details of it, but I had this mechanic. I've been knowing him probably since my baby was in a car seat. Very, very good man, very loyal. He's helped me in so many different situations. I've recommended him to people, and he's helped them in a lot of different situations. And so I hadn't spoken to him in a couple of years. Well, what's so funny is, even when I don't talk to him for a while, when I call him, he always knows it's me. Well, I haven't spoken to him in a couple of years, and so I had gave him a call because why did they just come up behind me that fast? But anyway, because I wanted him to see if he can fix this mini motorcycle that I have. Now, I have been calling him for about a week, and every time I call, it goes to voicemail. That's not necessarily abnormal. And I could easily go to his house, because that is what I will normally do. I'll go to his house, knock on his door. He's been living in the same place forever. What I'm not understanding is, why are you writing me for absolutely no reason? And then you're getting in front of me to go where? Y'all was getting ready to see me cuss this man out. This is how people get into road rage fights. I really wasn't gonna cuss y'all, but he literally was riding me and then jumped in front of me because he's riding me. But that's interesting, because I'm sure if I was a guy, he wouldn't be doing that. And that's why I thank God for self-control, because that's how people kill people, because people are ignorant like that. But anyways, y'all, we live in effect, so this is what's happening. And so let me get back to my story. So I didn't want to go by, I didn't feel like going by his house, right? So I called a friend of mine. I texted a friend of mine and I said, hey, can you send me his phone number? I don't feel like going by his house. I said, I've been calling for a week. He's not answering. Do you think he has a different number? Because it keeps going straight to voicemail. But the crazy thing is, when I sent the text, a trigger popped up in my brain. What is the trigger? Somebody that I was very, 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 very close to. If I told y'all who it was, or if I told y'all the nature of the relationship, y'all would be like, wow, who does that? But anyway, somebody who I was very close to also knew this mechanic. And that person has some mental health struggles or what have you. But I remember the mechanic said, you know why I actually decided to help you? He said, number one, because I realized, now this is when my son was like an infant, like little. He said, number one, I realized you were a single parent. He said, number two, a single mom. He said, I knew something was up when the person said to me, if she comes to you for any type of help, don't help her. He said, and I couldn't understand why, if this person is who they are in your life, why would they tell me that about you? Because first of all, you're a woman. Second of all, you're a single parent. He said, and every time I've met you, you've never came off any type of way. So that happened probably 9 years ago, but that popped up in my brain. Why am I saying that? Because it's so important to heal from things from your past. Now, the person who said it doesn't know that I know, right? And I don't mistreat them or anything, but a couple of things. It's important. Well, the reason why I'm saying that is because the person doesn't know that I know, so therefore there was not going to be an apology issued, number one. And number two, some may say, well, why didn't you bring it up to the person? Well, I didn't bring it up to the person because you have to know your audience, and I knew that that person would not be truthful. But I knew with this individual, what the mechanic said was true, because at that point I had only knew the mechanic for about a month and a half. And why would you sow that type of discord? That could actually go very, very left had that not been true, because you could have said, based on their relationship, if I make this up, they could be tight and then I could have an issue. So I knew he wasn't telling a lie, and I knew the person. Meaning when I say know your audience, I knew the person. So I'm saying it's so important to manage things when you don't get an apology, when you can't have the conversation. Watch this. When you shouldn't have the conversation. Now, this is a different live, what I'm getting ready to say next. I am not trying to say that you don't have a right to talk to a person about how you're feeling, if they hurt you or whatever the case may be. But what I also know is, just like the Bible talks about, there's a time for everything. There literally is a time for everything. And like I said, you may not even get that opportunity. And so, I just was like, wow, something that happened that long ago popped up in my brain. And even though it happened that long ago, I still had to, in the moment, manage how I felt. 1 second. If I was a guy, you wouldn't have been doing all of that. Don't be like me and respond to people, because he's a man. And I know that if I was a man, he wouldn't be doing that. And so that's tasteless. So anyway, so you have to manage past trauma triggers, and managing can look different for everybody, right? You may have to journal, some may have to get therapy, some may pray, some may write a book, some may do all of the above, right? But the overall goal is, sometimes do not let the devil trick you on putting emphasis on the offense. Watch this. It doesn't mean the offense is invalid. It doesn't mean that you don't have a right to be offended. It doesn't mean you don't have a right for your feelings to be hurt. It doesn't mean any of those things. It doesn't mean any of those things. Huh?
A female can get shot too.
That's fine. But you didn't do it. He says a female could get shot too. But why are you saying that when you didn't do it? See, that's male ego. But anyway, so which is why I said, but you didn't do it. Don't be like me, y'all, okay? See, I'm from Milwaukee, and I'm not justifying, but don't be like me, because people literally are getting killed for road rage, for sure. But, it's just important to manage those things and to manage those emotions. Because if you're not careful, it'll overtake you. If you're not careful, the enemy will trick you so that you can be consumed. Like I said, that was about 9 years ago, and that popped up in my head. Now, I can't say why, or I can't go into all of that. But you know what I said? Lord, thank you for allowing me to heal from certain things that I may have not gotten the apology, or I may have not been able to have that conversation. And I said, Lord, continue to help me be able to deal with things that have hurt me, disappointed me, things I have questions about, things I did not understand, things I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to put 1 + 1 together, and even though I could see that 1 + 1 should equal 2, it's equaling 7, and I'm not sure. I don't understand. But when God gives you peace about something, He will give you the understanding that you need. He will give you the comfort that you need. And I know a lot of these things can sound so cliche. They can sound so cliche, but it is so true, because I'm talking from experience, living it. I'm talking from counseling people. And when I say you have to take the emphasis off of the offense, it doesn't mean ignore it. But you have to realize why is the enemy trying to use this against me? Why does he want this to continue to come up? Or why does he want this to come up at the most inopportune time? Or why does he want it to come up when I'm not even thinking about it? Like, this wasn't even on my mind. And so that's why that I was not premeditating that. That thought popped into my brain. And I said, Lord, all I can do is say thank you. Because I didn't get the apology. I didn't have the conversation. I won't actually ever have the conversation, right? And I have no intent of treating that person bad, talking about that person behind their back, holding a grudge if that person comes back into my circle, which they have to a degree. But I had to find a level of peace within myself, because I have to realize that my betterment is not always for the sake of someone else to benefit, but it's for me to benefit first. Because see, when you're carrying around pain, trauma, triggers, secrets, that stuff will eat you from the inside out. And when I say secrets, I'm not even talking about egregious things. It could just be something you've never told anybody that's hurting you, and all you never brought to the table, right? It could be something that you feel you could have done differently, but you didn't really know how to approach it. It's important to forgive others, and it's also important for you to forgive yourself. So that's why I posed the question. Take an assessment and ask yourself, am I honest about my trauma and my triggers? Do I try to mask it? Do I try to pretend like they're not there? Do I try to just say, oh, well, that was my childhood, it doesn't matter? But the truth of the matter is, it actually has affected me as an adult. Do I try to just say, hey, they never gonna say da-da-da-da, so it ain't no point in me holding on, but I know that I'm really holding on. And even though I might not be talking about it or dealing with it every day, I can actually recognize it shows up in my life. Because if you can answer yes to any of those questions, if you want to be honest with yourself, that's when you know you got to start dealing with it. Like I said, it could be therapy. It could be going to the gym. It could be writing it out. It could be going to the beach and doing that old cliche thing. Write it, throw it in the water. Throw the jar in the water. Make a burn pit. Write down how you feel and burn it. I don't always like to give a whole bunch of ways to deal with things, because everybody deals with things differently. And how you deal with it, like I always say, if it's healthy, if it promotes betterment, if it helps your mental health and well-being, and then if it also enhances your life and enhances who you are and enhances everything around you and what's connected to you, whether it's a job, whether it's how you view things, whether it's what you eat. Hey, I told somebody, I was counseling somebody, I said, listen, if you got a bond with a fruit, it doesn't matter to me. You know why? Because at the end of the day, if you can get to happiness, wholeness, and peace and learn how to manage your mental well-being, it don't matter. If you got to talk to a fruit, and we're not talking about craziness, but if you got to talk to a fruit, change your diet, get on some sort of regimen, switch things up, whatever you got to do. But one thing you don't do is don't let the devil trick you from not dealing with it. You all know how many people have had severe childhoods, not the best relationships, and they haven't even really talked to anybody, and the people who they thought that they were going to talk to as a support system maybe didn't respond the way that they needed, and they still carrying that around. But because they have learned to just continue to go through life, they make themselves think that it doesn't affect them, it doesn't affect their relationships, it doesn't affect how they think, it doesn't affect some of the habits they have. People have been through traumatic situations, abused by their parents or lack thereof, had to be in foster care, or struggled financially, was like, hey, I remember we was eating sandwiches every day, or a can of beans, or or I remember we had to clean up all day, we couldn't go outside. There's all types of different things that we could be traumatized as a child. Just because it didn't happen to me doesn't mean that if it happened to you that it's not a trauma. And sometimes we have stories that can quote unquote may justify what happened. Man, all I ate growing up was these 4 or 5 different things, but you know what? My parents did the best that we could. Yeah, but guess what? Those 4 or 5 things that you continue to eat could be a trauma in your life later on. Like, oh yeah, I've heard people say that, like, oh yeah, I don't eat lima beans because, man, that's all I ate growing up. But even though you may mask it by saying, but mama and daddy did the best they could. Okay, but that's still traumatizing. And sometimes we don't even think something like that can affect how we function, our well-being, how we view things, but it's the truth. Or if you always grew up in a person, and back in the day, there were certain dynamics culturally. You always getting fussed at, getting beat on. You seen your mama get beat on, cheated on. You seen your daddy be a drunkard, or vice versa. Your daddy was getting cheated on and beat on, and the mama was a drunkard, or whoever raised you. Those things are traumatizing. Knowing that your parents struggled, traumatizing. Not having the best Christmas, traumatizing. Not being able to go to your parents and receive love or give love, traumatizing. Not being able to talk and being told, shut your mouth, traumatizing. Being whooped and saying, be quiet, I'm going to whoop you again, traumatizing. And again, this is a different live, what I'm getting ready to say next. I understand why we did some of those things, so I'm not knocking anybody. But that does not mean we mask it and act like that didn't hurt me, or act like we didn't have those memories, or act like, and it don't even always have to be associated with family. You could be traumatized from something that happened in school, right? You could be traumatized by different memories. Like I remember one time me and my foster brother got caught up in some stuff, and my grandmother was coming up the stairs. He hurried up and threw the lighter in there, and my grandmother was like, what are y'all doing? Just to hear her disappointment, traumatizing. I was a little girl. I was scared to death. I didn't know what she was going to do, even though she didn't have a history of whooping me. Traumatizing. Why? Because when I look at lighters or anything, guess what? I think about that. And then I remember he lied and said I did it. And I'm like, I didn't do it. Traumatizing. And so it's just so important to just take an assessment and not hide from your pain, not hide from the pain of childhood, teenage years. Again, you could be traumatized from going to a party at a school, not being able to go to prom because you couldn't afford it, not being able to have a date, having to sit at lunch by yourself. Hey, I remember people say, oh, I couldn't dress a certain way, and kids bullied me and picked on me. Traumatizing, right? So you got to be able to talk about those things, or find a way to not just stuff it. And I know people think, oh, that's just the way I cope. That's just how I deal with it. Well, I could tell you, statistically proven, and from me counseling hundreds and thousands of people, it does not work. When you try to mask it, when you try to suppress it, it's still there. And you may not correlate point A, B, C to D. You may not correlate 1988 to 1996 relationship or issues to 2021 relationship issues. You probably aren't even making the connections. Why? Because you've suppressed it. You've ignored it. You've now come into who you think you are. You like, hey, I made it this far, so I can't be dealing with it that much, and da-da-da. But you got to deal with those things. Deaths in family, traumatizing. Divorces, traumatizing. Broken relationships, being dumped. Thinking you finna marry your high school sweetheart. All of those things can be traumatizing and can make an imprint and or impression on your life. Even I know you think you don't believe. I know some of y'all like, nah, ain't no way that what happened to me. I'm telling you, there's a way. I always like the movie Twilight, where the wolf made it. One of the wolves imprinted on a different wolf. And when I think about that, I think, it's so significant because, for one, she was a child. So why is that significant to our life? Because we don't realize there's so many things we can be imprinted on when we're a child. Why? Because we're innocent, we're vulnerable. All of those things that we're exposed to shapes who we are. I know you like, there's no way what happened to me when I was da-da-da is affecting me later on, 20, 30 years from now. Yes, it is. You just haven't put it together yet. Another thing that I talk about often when I post is I say, people describe themselves, oh, this is how I am as a person. Who told you that? But you know where you probably got some of that from? Some of that data is true. But some of the way you are is because you were shaped by circumstances, culturally, environmentally, how you were raised, lack thereof. So you have been walking around for years saying, I'm just not a communicator. I'm just not a hugger. Who told you that? Or did you just adapt that? Because that's all you know. That's all you were pre-exposed to. I see it every day, y'all. I talk to people that deal with this stuff every day. And y'all should know by now I'm not going to come on here and say something crazy. So just think about those things. And if you're not sure where to start, if you haven't had any crisis or situations, which I feel everybody has, that has come up this month, I want you to think about your last incident that you felt upset, or I don't want to put a descriptive word because I can name many: upset, lonely, agitated, frustrated, annoyed, irritated. I'm talking about something that you can really know really affected you. And I want you to break it down. Don't break it down from an immature place. I want you to break it down and really ask yourself, why did I respond like that? What was it about what they said or they did or they didn't say? Why did that bother me so much? And I know your mind wants to automatically go to, well, the history of this person, this is what they do, and that's why I got frustrated. But I want you to do a little, you know how you can go to get a massage and they say, do you want a deep tissue massage? Because that means they're not just going to go on the surface. They're going to try to go deeper. They're going to press a little harder. So I want you to go a little bit deeper. You don't even got to tell nobody. Just go a little. This is an honest conversation with yourself. And if you got a relationship with God, this is between you, yourself, and God. And ask yourself, why did I respond like that? And I want you to kind of take the person out of it. Because it's easy to say, well, because they do this. No, really go beyond that and say, can I trace this back to something in my childhood? Just think about it. Is it really because of what they said, or is it because I have a hard time processing something that sounds like rejection? Is it really because they didn't move when I say, or they didn't, act the way that I wanted? Or is it really because this is tracing back to me feeling ignored when I wanted something, but my parents didn't give it? Or because I always felt like I always felt like when I was in the room, nobody paid me any attention. Or at school, I felt like people picked on me. So again, I don't want to give a bunch of scenarios because I don't want to premeditate anything in your mind, but I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. I want you to do a deep mental tissue. Go deeper than just isolating it to the person. And here's why this is going to be good too. Because you should know why you got upset, other than why did they say that? No, it's bigger than why they said that. And it's sometimes bigger than just the individual or just the circumstance. Because ask yourself, is this the only especially if you're older and you've encountered many people in any form of relationship, that wasn't your first time getting mad. So I'm sure you've gotten mad before about similar things, but it was a different individual. So that's why don't just lock it into that person, but really ask yourself, why do I respond that way? Why did I take it that way? Again, remove the person, remove the situation, because it's easy to zero in and say, well, I responded that way because they should have never said, no. But push yourself, challenge yourself to go back. Now, I'm not trying to trigger you guys by giving you this quick assignment, but I'm trying to push you to be able to deal with things so that the outcome could be healthy, so that the outcome could be better, so that the outcome could be what used to bother me don't bother me no more, because I figured out the root of it and I'm learning to deal with it. Because what I can tell you is ignoring it is not the way to go. Masking it is not the way to go. I love y'all. And listen, if you are interested in any type of coaching, one-on-one, or if you know somebody, tell them to go on my social media, hit me up, my first and last name, Jennifer Carly. They can DM me, message me. I love y'all. We'll talk soon.